I agreed to an open marriage after my husband spent a month begging me, claiming it would strengthen our bond. 2 weeks later, he met the one and asked for a divorce. But 6 months later, he's back crying on my doorstep after she left him homeless and penniless. Hi everyone. I'm using a throwaway account because I don't want this situation linked to my main. 10 months ago, I, 32F, reluctantly agreed to open my marriage with my husband Jake, 34M of 8 years. And it completely destroyed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. We've been together since college and our marriage had been pretty solid for the most part. We both had good careers, a beautiful house in the suburbs, and we're discussing starting a family soon. But about a year ago, Jake started acting differently. He became distant, constantly on his phone and working late more often than usual. I initially suspected he might be having an affair, but when I confronted him, he denied it completely. Instead, he told me he'd been doing a lot of research on relationships and had discovered the concept of ethical non-monogamy. He claimed that many modern couples were embracing open marriages and that it actually strengthened their bonds. He showed me articles, podcasts and online forums where people discussed how opening their relationships had revitalized their marriages and deepened their connection. At first, I was completely against the idea. I'd always been monogamous and had never considered being with anyone other than Jake. The thought of him being with other women made me physically ill. But Jake was relentless. For 3 months straight, he brought it up constantly, showing me more evidence of how beneficial it could be for us. It's just about physical exploration, he'd say. Our emotional connection will always be primary. We'll set boundaries, check in regularly, and it will make us appreciate each other more. He even suggested that I might enjoy the freedom to explore as well. You've only been with me since college. Don't you wonder what else is out there? This could be liberating for both of us. After months of pressure, I finally gave in, mostly to stop the constant discussions. We drafted an agreement with clear boundaries, no mutual friends, complete honesty about who we were seeing, safe making love practices, and either of us could veto the arrangement at any time. I thought that last part would be my safety net. 2 weeks after we officially opened our marriage, Jake met Olivia at a work conference. He came home absolutely buzzing about her, talking about their incredible connection and how they just clicked on every level. I felt sick to my stomach, but reminded myself that I had agreed to this arrangement. Over the next week, Jake spent every night texting with Olivia. He went out with her 3 times that week, coming home later and later each time. By the second weekend, he didn't come home at all, just sent a text saying he was staying at Olivia's place. When he finally returned home Sunday evening, he sat me down for an important conversation. My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely hear him over the rush of in my ears. "I've fallen in love with Olivia," he said, his eyes bright with excitement that made me nauseous. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. It's like she's my soulmate. I didn't think this would happen, but I can't deny these feelings." I reminded him of our agreement that this was supposed to be purely physical, not emotional. His response crushed me. "I know what we agreed, but you can't control feelings. This just happened. It's not like I planned it," he said, as if that somehow made it better. "I think we need to face reality. Olivia and I have something special, and I want to explore that fully." I broke down completely, sobbing and asking how he could do this after 8 years together. His answer still haunts me. "I didn't know what I was missing until I met her. We have a connection on a whole other level. I think I finally found my person." Within 3 weeks of meeting Olivia, Jake asked for a divorce. He moved out the following weekend, taking most of his belongings and leaving me alone in our home. The home we had picked out together, renovated together, and planned to raise children in. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Jake wanted to split everything 50-50. Despite the fact that I had contributed more to our home's down payment from an inheritance. His lawyer argued that as marital property, it didn't matter where the money came from originally. Throughout the negotiations, Jake kept pushing for a quick resolution so he could move forward with Olivia. To add insult to injury, all our friends knew about Olivia within weeks. Jake had introduced her to our entire social circle, and many of them seemed to accept the situation. Some even told me they'd never seen Jake so happy and alive. I felt like I was living in some alternate reality where everyone had gone insane. I spiraled into depression, barely able to get out of bed for work. I started therapy immediately and was diagnosed with situational depression and anxiety. My therapist helped me understand that what Jake had done was a form of emotional manipulation, pressuring me into an arrangement I wasn't comfortable with, then violating the terms we had set. Meanwhile, Jake and Olivia's relationship moved at warp speed. Through mutual friends, I heard they had moved in together just 1 month after our separation. 2 months after that, they were engaged. Jake had never seemed in a rush to have children with me, but I soon learned that Olivia was already pregnant. The timeline suggested she got pregnant very shortly after they met. I blocked Jake on all platforms and asked our friends not to give me updates about his life. I focused on healing, continuing therapy, and slowly rebuilding my sense of self. I sold our house. I couldn't bear to live there with all the memories, and moved to a smaller place closer to my workplace. I adopted a dog for companionship and started reconnecting with old friends who weren't part of our mutual social circle. 6 months passed. I was finally starting to feel like myself again when I heard a knock at my door one rainy Sunday evening. When I opened it, I found Jake standing there soaking wet, looking nothing like the confident man who had left me. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes disheveled, and he had clearly lost weight. "Can I come in, please?" he asked, his voice cracking. "I've made a terrible mistake." Against my better judgment, I let him in. What followed was a confession that left me stunned. Apparently, the fairy tale with Olivia had quickly turned into a nightmare. After moving in together, he discovered she had massive credit card debt that she'd hidden from him. She had lost her job but hadn't told him, instead pretending to go to work while actually meeting friends or shopping, adding to her debt. When Jake confronted her about the financial deception, she became emotionally manipulative, using her pregnancy to make him feel guilty. She would to leave and take his child away if he didn't support her lifestyle. "She's nothing like I thought she was," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "She completely changed once she had me locked down." The final straw came when Jake discovered that Olivia had been cheating on him with her ex-boyfriend, the man Jake had originally thought was out of the picture. Even worse, there was now a question about the paternity of the baby. When Jake had confronted her about the cheating, she had kicked him out of the apartment, which was in her name, and kept all the furniture he had bought. She had maxed out their joint credit card the same day, leaving him essentially homeless and broke. "I've been staying at a motel for the past week," he confessed. "I've drained my savings. I don't know what to do." As he sat there crying in my living room, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me, a small, vindictive part, was satisfied to see him suffering after what he had put me through. But mostly I felt empty. The man sobbing on my couch was someone I used to love more than anything. And now he felt like a stranger. "What do you want from me, Jake?" I asked finally. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," he said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I away 8 years for a fantasy. She wasn't real. None of it was real. What we had was real. And I destroyed it. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for another chance. I still love you. I never stopped loving you." I took a deep breath and told him the truth. "I don't love you anymore, Jake. You broke something that can't be fixed." The look on his face was one of complete devastation. But for the first time in months, I felt strong. I hadn't realized until that moment how far I had come in my healing journey. "I can loan you enough money for another week at the motel," I told him. "That should give you time to contact your parents or brother for help. But I can't be the one who saves you from this. That's not my role anymore." Jake tried arguing, reminding me of our history, the good times we'd shared, how we had once planned a future together. But with each plea, I felt more certain of my decision. "You should get a paternity test before you commit to anything with Olivia or the baby." I advised him and Jake, "Don't contact me again. We have nothing left to say to each other." After he left, I sat alone, feeling a strange sense of closure. The man I had married, the future I had planned. They were truly gone now. But so was the devastation I had felt 6 months ago. In its place was a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. Update 1 2 months later. It's been 2 months since Jake showed up at my door, and so much has happened that I felt I needed to share an update first. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your support and validation meant more than you know during a really difficult time. The day after Jake's visit, I received multiple texts from him thanking me for the loan and promising to pay me back. He also continued to apologize and ask for another chance. I didn't respond to any of his messages and eventually blocked his new number too. What I didn't expect was for Olivia to contact me. She found me on social media and sent a long message, accusing me of trying to steal back Jake and me if I continued to interfere in their relationship. It was clear from her message that Jake had gone back to her, probably because he had nowhere else to go and had given her a very different version of our interaction. According to Olivia, Jake had told her that I had begged him to come back and was still obsessed with him. When he refused, I supposedly became hysterical and to ruin them. None of this was remotely true, of course. I did not respond to Olivia either, just blocked her and tightened my social media privacy settings. I also warned a few close friends that Jake and Olivia might try to contact them to get to me. About 3 weeks after Jake's visit, I received an email from him. Apparently, he was determined to find some way to reach me. The paternity test had come back and he was not the father of Olivia's baby. He wrote that he was devastated, but had finally seen her true colors and had moved out for good, staying with his brother while he got back on his feet. The email ended with yet another plea for reconciliation, saying that fate had given us a second chance and that he had learned his lesson. He even attached links to couples therapists in our area, saying he was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild trust. I did not respond to this email either. I felt bad for Jake. No one deserves that kind of deception. But his problems were no longer mine to solve, and his pain was no longer mine to soothe. Last week, I had dinner with one of our mutual friends who I've remained close with. She told me that Jake has been telling everyone who will listen that he made the mistake of his life and is on a mission to win me back. Apparently, he's been asking our friends for advice on how to get through to me, sending me gifts that I've been returning unopened, and even drove by my new place a few times hoping to accidentally run into me. I asked her to please tell Jake that his behavior is bordering on stalking and needs to stop immediately. I also made it clear that there is absolutely no chance of reconciliation, and the more he persists, the more he's confirming my decision to end our marriage was the right one. On a more positive note, my life has continued to improve. My therapist says I've made tremendous progress in processing my grief and trauma. I've been promoted at work, my dog Buddy is the best companion I could ask for, and I'd even started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it feels good to know that my heart isn't permanently broken. I still have moments of anger and sadness about how my marriage ended, but they're becoming less frequent and less intense. Most days, I'm genuinely happy and excited about this new chapter of my life, one that I get to write completely on my own terms. Update 2. 4 months later. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I'm writing this with a mix of exasperation and amusement. Jake's campaign to win me back escalated to the point where I had to get my lawyer involved. After multiple ignored messages, returned gifts, and my clear statements through mutual friends that I wasn't interested, he still wouldn't take no for an answer. The final straw was when he showed up at my workplace with flowers and a handwritten letter, creating an uncomfortable scene in front of my colleagues. That same day, I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist letter, making it explicitly clear that any further contact would result in legal action. The letter seems to have worked, as I haven't heard from him directly since. However, I've learned through mutual friends that he's now telling everyone a new story that I'm mentally unstable and refusing help from people who care about me. He's positioned himself as a concerned ex-husband who just wants to make sure I'm okay, rather than the he was becoming. Fortunately, most of our mutual friends see through this and have been distancing themselves from him. His behavior has revealed a side of him that many of them never saw during our marriage. As for Olivia, she gave birth last month. I heard from a friend that Jake tried to reconnect with her after finding out he wasn't the father. But she's back with her ex-boyfriend, the actual father of her baby, and wants nothing to do with Jake. I can't say I feel sorry for either of them. On my end, things continue to improve. I'm seeing someone new, Mark, who knows my full story and has been incredibly respectful of my boundaries and healing process. It's still early days, but it feels healthy and honest in ways my relationship with Jake never was, even before the open marriage disaster. The contrast between my relationship with Mark and my marriage to Jake has been eye-opening. With Mark, there's no pressure, no manipulation, just open communication and genuine care for each other's well-being. It's made me realize how much I compromise my own needs and boundaries throughout my marriage. My therapist says this is a common realization for people coming out of manipulative relationships. You don't always see the unhealthy dynamics until you experience something better. This doesn't mean my entire marriage was bad, but it definitely wasn't as perfect as I had convinced myself it was. As I approach the 1-year mark since Jake first brought up opening our marriage, I can honestly say that while I would never choose to go through that pain again, I'm grateful for where it has led me. I'm stronger, more self-aware and more committed to my own happiness than I've ever been. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us exactly where we need to be. Update 6 months later. I hadn't planned on posting another update, but something happened recently that I felt warranted sharing, especially since so many of you have followed my journey from the beginning. Last month, I was at a restaurant with Mark, who is now officially my boyfriend, when I spotted Jake dining with a woman I didn't recognize. It was bound to happen eventually. We live in the same city, but I still felt my heart rate spike at the sight of him. Mark noticed my tension and asked if I wanted to leave, but I decided to stay. This was a public place, and I refused to let Jake's presence disrupt my evening. What I didn't expect was for Jake to approach our table. He looked nervous but determined as he introduced himself to Mark and asked if he could speak with me privately for a moment. Mark looked to me for guidance, and I appreciated that he didn't try to answer for me or play the protective boyfriend role without my consent. "Anything you need to say to me can be said in front of Mark," I told Jake firmly. Jake seemed uncomfortable, but nodded. "I just wanted to apologize in person for my behavior after our divorce," he said. "The way I handled things, showing up at your house, your workplace, not respecting your boundaries, it was wrong. I've been in therapy for the past few months and I'm working on understanding why I acted that way," he continued. "I don't expect forgiveness, and I'm not asking to be part of your life again. I just wanted you to know that I recognize how inappropriate my behavior was, and I'm sorry for any stress or fear I caused you." I was genuinely surprised by the sincerity in his voice. It wasn't the desperate pleading of his previous apologies, but something more reflective and mature. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "I appreciate the apology." Jake gestured toward his table. "I should get back to my date. I wish you both the best." And with that, he walked away. Mark and I finished our dinner discussing the unexpected encounter. The strange thing was, I felt an immediate sense of relief after seeing Jake. Not because I harbored any lingering feelings for him, but because seeing him as just another person, not the man who destroyed my life, not the desperate ex trying to win me back, helped solidify how much I've moved on. Later that night, I received an email from Jake. It wasn't another attempt at reconciliation, but a formal apology for everything from pressuring me in the open marriage to his stalking behavior afterward. He explained that he's been diagnosed with certain patterns of behavior that explained but didn't excuse his actions, and that he's committed to working on himself. He ended by saying he was dating someone new who knows his full history and that he's approaching this relationship with the lessons he learned from destroying ours. I didn't respond to the email, but I didn't feel the need to block him again either. It no longer matters to me what Jake does or doesn't do with his life. I wish him well. In the abstract way you wish well for any human being. But his journey is no longer connected to mine. As for me, life continues to flourish. Mark and I are talking about moving in together next year. My career is thriving. I recently started my own consulting business and it's already exceeding my financial projections. I've reconnected with family members I had drifted away from during my marriage and built a social circle that's truly supportive. The woman I was a year ago wouldn't recognize the woman I am today. And that's perhaps the greatest gift to come from this painful chapter. I've discovered a resilience and capacity for joy that I never knew I possessed. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, it gets better. Not immediately, not linearly, but eventually. Trust yourself, hold your boundaries firm and remember that you deserve a love that doesn't require you to compromise your values or diminish yourself. This will be my final update. Thank you all for bearing witness to my story and for the support you've shown me throughout this journey. May we all find the love and respect we truly deserve, especially from ourselves.